Isn't it lovely how sound brings us to stillness and quietness? And light does as well. For centuries, people have created sounds with bells and instruments, and they've created light with fire and candles. And it's become part of those things that make us feel like we can gather together around a sound or around a fire or around a flame or around light. And an opportunity like this for us to simply come together allows us to express in ceremony and in ritual a sense of connection with each other and a sense of sharing. Typically, over the years, this has been an annual event where families who have lost a loved one, who have attended a humanist ceremony or had a humanist ceremony, and the celebrants and the Humanist Society, the association, and people who are members of or who feel themselves to be humanists will be invited to the ceremony. And then we went through those dark days of lockdown and separation and the pain that went with that. And it was particularly poignant because that was a time when we needed to reach out, we needed to be there. And so we went virtual, we went online. And this is our first time meeting in person again since 2020, and that was the first year I emceed this event. And I simply ended up emceeing events since then because we went online and it was just easy to do it that way. So I'm hoping that we can get back to the tradition of having different members of the association, in particular those with an interest in chaplaincy, to come forward and present this. But this is a beautiful occasion, and hopefully it'll be bigger and better next year, because we were only dipping our toes back in the water again. And we're really very grateful that all of you have come to share your stories and to share your pain, and hopefully by being present to each other we can help to make that pain more bearable and easier to understand and perhaps easier to accept. It is interesting that in the years since COVID we thought they were dark days, and we thought we'd come out of it and the world would be a brighter, better place, and that we would have learned something about peace and quiet. And it seems that's not what's happened. We've gone from what seemed to be global problems that are escalating in a way. And so the fear that we thought we'd got beyond after COVID, it's there, but it's different. And so coming together is really important. Spending time together is really important. And if there was one good thing that came out of lockdown, it is the learning that we have that being present to each other, does that mean? That being present to each other and spending real time, face to face, heart to heart in each other's company is extremely valuable. And so, as I say, it is wonderful for us to be able to host something, and it's beautiful that people come to something like this. We have a few speakers who are going to speak, and we have a few singers who are going to sing. And I'm going to start, as we always have, by lighting a candle. And we would encourage those who are at home, I know this is being recorded, to maybe light a candle and let it flicker over the next and grow over the next 20, 30, 40 minutes. I'm not sure how long people are going to perform. Maybe somebody's going to sing, you know, something like Freebird, which could be 9 minutes long for all I know. So I'm going to light a candle, and I'm going to invite Dara maybe to come up and to play a piece of music while we do that, just as a moment of reflection. And because we're in a lexicon, I'm not going to leave an open candle. I'm going to put it inside the singing bowl. Our next piece is another one of our celebrants who I invited to come up, but he lives in Dingle, in the far reaches of the west of Ireland. And instead, he offered to do a little video for us. And this is something really quite special. This is Billy McGlynn, who is, well, he'll explain who he is himself. And hopefully this will play on the first going.
Smishe Billy McGlynn agus is lechtor sa bhéileadus me agus is céilúirí déanach. Is tócha gur sais cliché é níos go nennen muintir na héireann an bás go maith. Achas tóilm go bhfuil smut na fíorne I buint lei sin. Sa chultúr a ha gine agus a bhí riamh a gine. Bhí mar go maith ag tuair tacaíochta dus na daine a bhí fáca in ígan bháis, agus is tóilm go raibh mána úntacha a gin chun ómós agus comóra a dhéanamh ar na daine a bhí méireáin. Céim tú os na tafadaí lua cápéisi a bhí scríte síos na céata bliana hin, go raibh daine a gánaí ann mar chuig an tochaí ní hamháin na cléir ach daine ar nós na maná chuinte agus an bóirí chin, daine a bhí in ann ómós agus céilúir a dhéanamh ar na daine a bhí mithe. Agus bhí róla na áirithe ag a daine, na maná chuinte go háirithe, bhíidir in ann an pobl a stiúrú tríd an bhás agus céilúire agus ómós a dhéanamh ar an daine, is slí a hiig daine, agus bhíidir mar sais áiseáirí ar na mothúcháin a bhíoch ag a daine chomá. Agus an bóirí chéin agus na cluichí tóidh a bhíoch riamh ann. Tá meach bás ceart mar a dtíar fá ann, sean daine a bhór bás I slí nádúirthe. Bheith céilúire a dhéanamh ag an bobal. Bheidíist I dtéanamh tóidh maireach, bhíoch ceol agus bhíoch cluichí agus ómós úntach ar an duine. Is minic go raibh neart agus brí ag buint leis na mána sa agus leis na cluichí agus na téamaí is mó a bhí ag buint leis an dóibh ná go bhfuil míad láidir mar réan. Éon daine bhhair na sesin agus go bhfuil míad ar fágad sláán leis an duine go sláán tiúil agus sa in mó ceart a bhí ceapatha ag an sochaí. Bhí daine I gánaí las mád an léir, daine eile a bhí in ann an pobl a stiúrú. Agus thar ama, cinn tú fiúbhain sa látá nniuhhain go bhfuil mána agus slite ag a daine chun an sochaí a stiúrú agus sais neart agus an takeíocht a thuirtóid bheith mór thimpeall látha. Agus is tócha mar cheilúirí go bhfuil mar chuid an bráise san méachan tú ar cuasaí staire cían tú go bhfuil mána seanmhóna agus seanartha siúin I dul trídan ó fad ach go raibh nuálacht de hir ann agus cé go míon rudaí mar an gceanna bhíonn siad ag athrú chomá agus mar cheilúirí tháinig mar chuid don bráise san agus don athrú agus mar réannachta go bhfuil míadne sais freigarach as na nuálach san agus braham go bhfuil mar chuid don srosan dal tríd star na héireann da chuoine a bhí mar áiseóirí agus go bhfuil sé sais de dheolgus a rinne sa látá nniuhhain, seanmhóna ó thuirt chun cín agus mána nó a chuma chun céilúire agus ómós a dhéanamh ar chuoine.
Flisean íontach ó Billy McGlynn sa Cairlan spéisiúil ag seanam a dheibhthar which is the instrument. So his is a Celtic Yevahar. It's his own interpretation or iteration of a Turkish instrument. And the sound of it is unreal. I'd love him to bring it here and play it in a live setting. It'd be astounding. But that's Billy McGlynn, and a really, really lovely piece. I'm now going to invite another of our performers, an actor, and one of our fellow celebrants, Ethna, to please come up. Ethna Dempsey to please come up and speak about some of the families, some of whom are here today, who she worked with during the year.
Margaret Keane, thank you. My name's Ethna Dempsey. I'm a Humanist celebrant. I've been doing ceremonies for the last 13 years. And I have to say, my road to Damascus moment was about 16 years ago. You spoke about, I'm a performer, I'm a singer and actor, and I used to sing at weddings and funerals, and 110% I knew what I was viewing was not for me. And 16 years ago, a fellow actor from the Abbey who died, unfortunately, too young. His Humanist ceremony was in Mount Jerome. Brian Whiteside was the celebrant, and my friend's wife is an artist. She had painted the coffin lid. There were stories, songs, tears and laughter, and I said, that's for me. And so I am thrilled to once again, over 13 years, to be here at Time to Remember. So I'm going to call out to these families that I was honoured to be invited, and I'm so thrilled. Quite a few of you are here today. So back in January on the 24th, Bernadette Boylan. Now, this was a twofer, am I right? Because 8 weeks earlier in December, I had been invited to conduct a Humanist ceremony for Bernadette's husband, Brendan. And I have a vivid memory of sitting on the couch in their home beside Bernadette as she told me of her life with her husband and her daughters, her love of music and radio chat shows. She struck up a great relationship, great rapport with Jerry Ryan over the years. Whenever there was a quiet moment, definitely wouldn't be a dark, what do they call it when sound goes quiet? Yeah.
Dead air.
Thank you.
Dead air.
Dead air. There was never any dead air because Bernadette would run into the breach and say, hiya, Jerry. So it's so lovely to have her family here today. Thank you. Now, Brian O'Brien. I've known Brian for almost 50 years. Meeting in Sundrive Players when I took roles in various plays and musicals. There's so much to say about Brian, but what I remember most is Brian's laugh that resonates. So honoured to be his celebrant. And then Harry Baker. His partner was Una Dempsey, no relation, and he was dad to Keith. Harry was a jeweller and loved golf. He ran marathons and loved a can of Guinness. Now in May, we had a memorial in Trinity College for Susie Uda. Susie had donated her body to medical science, and her family and colleagues organised the most uplifting celebration of her life. I had the pleasure of marrying Susie's son David and his lovely woman Sophie Kenny. Indeed, I had conducted 3 Kenny weddings over the past decade, and so met Susie at each of those ceremonies. And then in July, Margaret Carroll, her son David, organised a beautiful ceremony for his mum, describing the most wonderful family outings and visits to the zoo. Before Margaret died, she made some videos for her granddaughter Amelia to be watched on various celebratory occasions in her life, and one in particular stood out for me. A video to help Amelia, who was 4 or 5 at the time, through sad times with the most uplifting advice. Anto Sweeney. According to his son Daniel, his dad Anto was a quiet, unassuming, inquisitive, creative person. I got to meet Anto's brothers and sister at the funeral home in Sallynoggin when Daniel had flown in from England. I was shown the most beautiful ceramic little boxes made by Anto. Sonia Pardeep Barrage Byrne. adored wife of Sean and mum to Lila. I first met Sonia and Sean in the Royal Marine Hotel, just behind this venue, 10 years ago, when we planned their wedding ceremony. I was then invited to conduct the wedding ceremony of Sonia's brother, Sonny and Nicole. And a few years later, was thrilled to be invited to be celebrant again for the naming ceremony of their treasure, little treasure, Lila Jane, 5 years ago. Am I right, 5 years? I was heartbroken to receive an email from Nicole last summer, letting me know that Sonia has asked for me to be her celebrant to conduct her funeral. Sonia and Sean and I discussed her choice of hydrocremation. That was a first for me in Navan, County Meath. The turnout for her funeral was so huge, the funeral home couldn't fit everyone in the building. And so the family organised a memorial gathering for Sonia in their home a month later. So wonderful to see you all here. Thank you. Margaret Renwick. Now, it was important, it's spelt R-E-N-W-I-C-K, and most people seeing Renwick would say Renwick, and this, no, it's Renwick, and I did not let her down. Margaret's children, Graham, Linda and Sarah, planned a celebration of their mum's life, which reflected her fun-loving, funny nature, bringing up mementos of her life which summed her up. Tea bags, kitchen roll, tarot cards, displaying her passion for wildlife in the beautiful photographs that Margaret took. And now Jan Wagenknecht. It was so important that I said his name correctly. Jan Wagenknecht, originally from the Czech Republic. Jan was a doer, sometimes dour. I was told by the family, that's okay, it's okay for me to say that. But a positive force. Nothing was a problem, and if it was a problem, it was to be solved. I had a wonderful time in the family home, built by Jan and his wife Lucy, with his daughters Dana, Nella and Holly. Liam, the son-in-law, played trumpet at his funeral, and I heard the most wonderful piece read at any funeral I've ever attended or conducted. I hope to share it with you later on. And then on Christmas Eve, Peter Bruce, who has a connection with Anto Sweeney, of whom I spoke earlier. On Christmas Eve, Peter's wife Helen contacted me to invite me to be their celebrant. Helen had seen me at Anto's funeral, her cousin, and decided I was a good fit for Peter. Peter was a wonderful artist. I saw examples of his work on the walls in their home. Loved classical music, travel, and feeding the wildlife in their garden. Now, a year ago, I conducted a funeral for Peter Buckley, beloved husband of Helen. That's 2 Peters and 2 Helens. It's very confusing sometimes. On the 10th of January this year, I was invited to create a memorial ceremony for Peter in their beautiful home in Wexford. Again, such an honour. And yesterday, it just keeps coming, I conducted a funeral ceremony for Maeve Burkett. The family had asked me to conduct a funeral ceremony for their father 8 years ago, and I learned in the gathering of information for conducting the ceremony that Maeve died on her husband Joe's birth date. You couldn't make this up. So, Tóg Solas ón lá cuimhnach an seo. Please take comfort from the remembrance celebration, and thank you.
I apologise, that's my phone.
It's a nice way to end my speech.
Beautiful segue. I have had the honour of representing the Humanist Association of Ireland and humanists generally, and those of non-faith, without a religion, at various ceremonies over the years. And recently, last year, and I'm doing it again this year, I was asked to be part of an interdenominational group who were remembering all the bikers who had died in the previous year. Sadly, 30 bikers across this little island lost their lives in the last year, and it's a devastating tragedy when it happens. Very often they're young, mostly males with a great exuberance for life, and perhaps they haven't yet learned to sort of slow down a little. And it is a really sad occasion because it obviously really devastates families and upsets them. What I love about this ceremony, though, it is the coming together of, this was in a church in Clonus, like in a beautiful church, and the parish priest hosted it, and then a Presbyterian rector from Scotland came and joined us to represent the Presbyterian, or the Church of Ireland / Church of England people, and I was asked to come to represent those who were of no faith. And it was really lovely to be able to speak about connection and about sharing and about community, because it is really about community. And for me, that was a very moving thing. And perhaps because it's close to the border, Cooperation Ireland started this a long, long time ago, but thankfully it's something that is continuing, and we're seeing communities coming together all the time. And hopefully in the coming years, we'll have communities of much greater, more diverse backgrounds coming together to spend time and to share their stories, to share their loss, and to support each other. This event was originally started by an amazing man called Nick Johnson, who I would also like to remember today, and his partner, Rosemary Cullen, who would have been a regular part of this ceremony, would have spoken about Nick. And I remember Nick obviously very fondly, and I'm thinking of Rosemary today. She's simply not here because she wasn't able. I'd also like to remember, like Ethna, some of the families that I've worked with this year. And interestingly, they came through contacts. One was a photographer I'd worked with as a wedding celebrant, and he came to me and asked me if I would conduct a funeral ceremony for his father, Dennis Mooney, who is survived by his brothers Finbar and Martin, and his sisters Colette and Joan. And I got to meet all of the family, not just Finn, who's the photographer, who I knew, Alan and Patricia and Sarah, and all of Dennis's grandchildren. Dennis was, to me, an amazing guy, a kind of a low-key guy who was just the salt of the earth, really, really solid, would do anything for anybody, probably to a fault. He was a husband who returned to Edenderry from being a medic in the Irish Navy to settle with his wife Rose and build a home together for their subsequent children. He was a father who loved his children and shared his quiet wisdom and interests with them. He was a doer, very hands-on, really good with his hands, making, improving, repairing, and particularly with carpentry. And he also loved his work in the housing department of Offaly County Council, and is missed hugely by his family because he was kind of the anchor, the rock. And I also want to remember Dr. Yvonne Rafferty. Again, this was a couple who I had married in 2022. I did a naming ceremony for their lovely little boy, Ruan, earlier in the year. And then Dervla, the mum of Ruan, came to me and asked would I do a funeral for her auntie, who was Dr. Yvonne Rafferty. And this was a really close family. All her siblings kind of were really close to each other, and they knew each other inside out, knew each other's lives really intimately. And it was just amazing to spend time with this family and listen to them tell stories and laugh and sing. And it was like they were in mourning, but they were celebrating this life of a woman who they loved. And so I was kind of swept along with this. Yvonne grew up in Cabra and went to the States just after she left school to fly with Eastern Airlines. And then she studied and qualified in psychology. She joined Pace University in New York as professor of psychology, became head of the faculty. She received a Fulbright Scholar Award to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to do a study research program. She was invited by the Society for the Study of Psychological Issues to represent them at the United Nations. Working with the United Nations, she developed the UNICEF Working Group on Girls on their Human Rights, Health, Safety and Education, and she was eventually conferred with the Jefferson Award Certificate of Excellence for Public Service, which is a really, really rare thing to receive. An extraordinary woman who did extraordinary things, particularly for young girls and women throughout the developing world. And her funeral was an amazing, uplifting ceremony. And they honoured her wishes, because very often families don't, but they did all of the frivolous things that she wanted, like even flying kites in the crematorium and singing Let's Go Fly a Kite as the curtain closed. It was awesome. So, folly that, Chris Place. Chris is one of our new celebrants, and he's going to recite, I think, a poem or a reading for us.
A poem, yeah, and I do need to apologise because at my dad's funeral 4 years ago, I gave out profusely to my sister for reading a poem from a phone.
Now look at you.
And here I am now. I know. I did. It was short notice, so I couldn't get to a printer. And I suppose this is well, I'm thinking of my dad and particularly my mum, who passed away earlier in the year. So it's a poem called "She Is Gone" by David Harkins, and I've adapted it slightly just to capture both mum and dad. You can shed tears that they are gone, or you can smile because they have lived. You can close your eyes and pray that they'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all they've left behind. Your heart can be empty because you can't see them, or it can be full of love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember them and only that they're gone, or you can cherish their memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what they'd want, smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. Thank you.
Lovely.
It's time for a song. I'm going to invite Chris's driver, Seamus Callahan, who is also one of our new celebrants, to come and sing a song for us. And if you'd explain.
Yeah. My brother Michael, whose picture is there, died last April. He was my older brother, but just 4.5 years older than me. And when people had asked me to describe Michael, I'd always say, Michael is a gentleman. And that's the best way I could describe him. And like a lot of Irish families, you know, when there'd be weddings and birthdays and get-togethers and New Year's Eves and all that, there'd always be a few pints, a few drinks, and a sing-song. Now, in the 60-plus years I knew Michael, Michael had one song. And while the rest of us down, as teenagers grew up and changed what our party piece was, you know, Michael only ever sang Carrickfergus. And that was a song. Now, I was saying to Chris on the way up, we've no record of Michael ever having visited Carrickfergus. We don't know ever did that. But this was his song. And nobody ever else sang that song because that was Michael's song, you know. And as my father used to say, when Michael sang that song, it stayed sung, you know. And so this is from Michael. I wish I was in Carrickfergus only for nights in Ballygrand. I would swim over the deepest ocean to my love and I. But the sea is wide, and I cannot swim over. Neither have I wings to fly. I wish I had a handsome boatman to ferry me over to my love and I. My childhood days bring back sad reflections of happy days spent so long ago. My childhood friends and my own relations have all passed on now like driven snow. For I've spent my days in endless roving, soft is the grass and my bed is free. But ought to be back now in Carrickfergus, on that long road down to the sea. It's in Kilkenny, it is reported, of marble stones there as black as ink, with gold and silver I would support her. But I'll say no more now till I get a drink. For I'm drunk today, and I'm seldom sober. A handsome rover from town to town. Ah, but I'm sick now, and my days are numbered. Come all ye young men, and lay me down. For I'm drunk today, and I'm seldom sober. A handsome rover from town to town. Ah, but I'm sick now, and my days are over. Come all ye young men, and lay me down.
We have celebrants with many talents, and one of our celebrants is Joe Armstrong, who traditionally has written poems or pieces for this event. Last year he penned a piece very specially for this event, and this year he's going to take it another level, but I'm going to ask you to read that for us, if you would, Joe.
Hourglass. You sometimes don't notice it, but it's there. When somebody dies who's close to us, and it has happened to all of us, it makes death very immediate. And part of our loss is the realization that we too, each of us, are going to die. The death of our loved one prompts profound questions in each of us. What will I do with my remaining life? Because some people die without ever having really lived. The simple words that I shall read invite us to make sure that we live before we die. I spent 9 years studying for the Catholic priesthood. And then one day I realized I don't need to do this. I was free to create a totally different life for myself. And I'm glad I did. And so today, as we mourn our loved ones, you and I can decide to create the person that we want to become. We can choose our own path. We can abandon fear and choose to live. So these words are called Everybody Dies. Everybody dies. Nobody gets out alive. Everybody dies. Everybody dies. What will we do? How will we be? What will I choose? I alone create me. The hourglass is turned. It can't be turned back. It's pouring fast, no matter what I do. I don't want to die. I don't want not to be. Time is going too fast. I don't want not to see. Everybody dies. Nobody gets out alive. Everybody dies. Everybody dies. I don't want to die without having lived. Too many, they die without having lived. Everybody dies. Nobody gets out alive. Everybody dies. So, make sure you live. Become yourself before you die. Don't live in fear. Be yourself before you die. Everybody dies. Nobody gets out alive. Everybody dies. Make sure you live.
There's still some sand in it. Well done.
Thank goodness for that.
Plenty to go.
There's plenty to go. There are some celebrants who have conducted funeral ceremonies and celebration of life ceremonies who sadly can't be with us today, and they asked me to remember on their behalf a few people. In particular, I want to think of Jill Bell, who is currently, running a Northwest Humanist meeting. She's from that part of the world. And she asked us to remember her partner, Brian Rogers, who died in March of last year. Jill actually conducted his own funeral or celebration of life ceremony, which I think was a very brave thing to do, but she was very comfortable with his passing because he had given her plenty of time to just spend time with him. He was a Thatcher, and several years ago he was asked by David McGowan, a local funeral director, if he would build a wake house as part of a museum of funerals that David wanted to develop in his premises in Collooney in County Sligo, where he trains funeral directors and embalmers. So being Sligo, they settled on designing a traditional Sligo thatched cottage, which Brian built within the main building. And in autumn of 2024, Brian was diagnosed then with a very aggressive, inoperable brain tumour. He decided not to have the recommended radiotherapy or chemotherapy, as he wanted to remain himself and be as well as possible in the remaining months that he had. He started to plan his funeral very soon after his diagnosis, and it was his hope to be the first client in the new crematorium that David was building. He didn't quite manage that. He died just 2 weeks after the crematorium opened. But Brian was a very verbose person and had a way with words, and when Jill was trying to think of what to say on RIP.ie, she settled on a real Brian style headline, and there he was, gone. And one of our other celebrants, Shona Weems, asks me to remember some of the people she worked with this year. Conor Biddle. She performed his wedding ceremony back in 2018, and then he died on the 24th of April 2025, aged just 37, survived by his husband, Sean, sister Grania, brother-in-law, Sean, mother, Sherry, parents-in-law, and sister-in-law. His life was celebrated by his family and a big gang of close friends and his many colleagues from the music industry. Hugh Scully died on the 12th of May last year, aged 51, survived by his daughter Faye, sister Jill, partner, parents, and nephew. Hugh donated his body for medical research, which is what many people who have a humanist ceremony, funeral ceremony, do. He was a well-known DJ and festival organiser and founder of Dublin Vinyl, for those of you who are into vinyl records. Pam Cummins, somebody who Shona also performed her wedding ceremony in 2020, died on the 30th of July last year and survived by her husband Martin and cherished mother, and she's also a mother herself of Michelle and Danielle and Paul. She will be deeply missed by her loving family, her daughter-in-law Maureen, son-in-law, and her adored grandchildren, Lee, Devon, Eli, Shay, Jude, Darcy, and Cora, and her sisters, Olive, Annie, and Elma. Professor Knapp Keeling died on the 8th of December 2025, only a short while ago, survived by his wife Roisin, his children Knapp, Libby, Christian, and Ed, and his grandchildren. Knapp was a force in medical education in Ireland, a lover of fast cars and good wine, and was often associated with smoking his pipe. And then Shona's friend, Sinead O'Connor, who was a yoga teacher, an author, and seeker of experience, died in the middle of June last year, survived by her parents, Jim and Sheila, and her sister, Aisling, and brother, Cormac. She will be greatly missed by her family, a young and vibrant woman who sadly passed at the peak of her life. I have a list of other people we'd like to remember, one of which is Bob Rees, and I know that Alan Tuffrey knew Bob, and I'd invite Alan, maybe you'd say a word about Bob for us.
Well, excuse me using notes, but although I was a lecturer for about 40 years, I never learned to lecture without notes. Anyway, Bob Rees was a big man in every sense. He was physically very big, but he had a huge character. And his funeral was a very impressive occasion. Funny enough, in the millions of slides that were showing, or it seemed to be millions, a lot of them featured glasses of alcohol of some kind or another. He and his wife both enjoyed what we might broadly call the fruit of the barley. He was a pints man, but he wasn't too fussy about other drinks either. He was a big man. He was one of the early members of HAI. He goes back, and I remember Joe Armstrong wrote a lovely obituary of Joe for being human. Obviously, it appeared just recently, actually, in the nature of these things. And Bob was at early days. He was the kitchen table, stuffing envelopes and folding pieces of paper and making newsletters, all that sort of stuff, which many of us have done in different capacities over the years, and the days before emails and such like things. Bob loved a discussion, not to say argumentative, I think, is what that usually means. And he expected people to hold their own in a discussion and to defend their point of view in their argument, and didn't hold grudges for people. He was a prolific writer, as well as producing 2 books, one of which was quite recent, and our local book club, North Dublin Humanist Community Book Club, actually had him to come and talk about it, and that was a great privilege. It was in my house, actually. It was an even bigger privilege. He was a great man. He wrote lots of articles for various humanist magazines and journals. His PC is yet to be investigated. I was communicating with Bob's daughter this morning, and she's yet to investigate his PC, but the folders of stuff are on their way to me. They were hoping to get them to me this week, but they will arrive probably next week. Well, obviously next week. They'll come. So we will have access to his archive. And I think editors of various humanist journals in Ireland might well be the beneficiaries of that over the coming weeks and months, possibly years, because he wrote all the time, over a long period of time. So I'll get that stuff. He's very much missed. I was fond of Bob. I visited him a few times in hospital, and he could be incredibly ungracious when you were visiting him. He was very matter of fact, but it was quite obvious that the staff, he was in hospital for several weeks and then went home for months. But when he was in hospital, it was quite obvious that the staff had a great respect for him, and he needed a lot of care at that stage. And he was well enough to go home and obviously got ill and died. So he's much missed. I'd like to take the opportunity, if I may, Keane, just to mention one other person who's only died in the last 10 days, and that's Edith Geraghty. That's not a name that will be known to many people in this room, even the sort of long-time humanists. She was a strange presence. She was an online presence only to most of us, including me. because she spent all the time I've known her, which is about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, she's been in hospital. She's been in hospital for several years, having numerous procedures and suffering a good deal in a very humanist way and a very characterful way. There's a lovely story which I won't bore you with now, but if you ask me nicely later, I'll tell you how to treat consultants in hospitals. She knew how to do it. I'm storing it away against the day. She was an online presence, I say, but what a presence. She was a very strong woman. She finished her days in the local hospice in the west of Ireland in Galway, and she apparently impressed the staff by her attitude towards her imminent death. She didn't fear death at all. She said, if there's anything else after death, well, that'll be a pleasant surprise, but I'm not afraid. That's Edith Geraghty. Thank you.
Thank you. We would also like to remember Fionnuala Lynch, Jimmy Dillon, Mick Mullen, Michael Callaghan, Frank McFadden, Annie McGarry, Laurie Hume, Angela Hume, Susan Place, Brendan Allard, Marie Fleming, Aidan Brady, John Hurley, Noel Smith, Jonathan Whelan, Clive Rowan, Brenda Whiteside, Brian's wife, who was a wonderful woman. I got to meet her a few times along the way. She was brilliant at hosting lots and lots of humanists. Merce Hobson and Paddy Foley and Declan Hogan. I just think it's really nice that we can have an occasion like this where we remember those who have passed in the last year. And I would invite Dara to come up and play a piece while we reflect a little bit on those of us, or those people we've loved and who have passed. Dara, would you do a nice reflective piece for us? And I'll give you a bit of reverb. I would like just to take a moment to invite anybody else who wants to come down and maybe remember somebody or speak of somebody that they have lost, if you would like to. Like, there's no pressure at all. Right. What I am going to do is I'm going to remind those of you who know already, or let you know if you haven't come across it, a book by Judith Ashton. It's a wonderful book, Be Prepared. It's about writing down your wishes for when you pass. And it's not a will. You can include a will in it if you like. But it's just the simple things that you would like people to do and people to maybe remember you for and put them in a little book. And it's a really nice piece of work. And it kind of brings you to sit and think about when you're not here. What will it be like for other people around you? And what would you like them to do to remember you? It's a really nice book. Ethna, you threatened to us earlier. with reading
Sorry
a
for
wonderful
you.
piece. No, I'll let you do that. I'll take the
I
lead.
heard this piece read at Jan Wagenknecht's funeral by his daughter, who is a scientist who is in science, and it just was such a great fit. It was written by Aaron Freeman, and it's called A Physicist's Eulogy. I'll try not to bore you with it, but I just think it's wonderful. You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. You want the physicist to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy, so they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the physicist to remind your sobbing mother about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy is created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your mother to know that all your energy, every vibration, every wave of every particle that was her beloved child remains with her in this world. You want the physicist to tell your weeping father that amid the energies of the cosmos, you gave as good as you got. And at one point, you'd hope that the physicist would step down from the pulpit and walk to your broken-hearted spouse there in the pew and tell him that all the photons that ever bounced off your face, all the particles whose paths were interrupted by your smile, by the touch of your hair, hundreds of trillions of particles have raced off you like children, their ways forever changed by you. And as your widow rocks in the arms of a loving family, may the physicist let her know that all the photons that bounced from you were gathered at the particle detectors that are her eyes, that those photons created within her constellations of electromagnetically charged neurons whose energy will go on forever. And the physicist will remind the audience of how much of our energy is given off in heat. There may be a few fanning themselves with their programs, as he says it. And he will tell them that the warmth that flowed through you in life is still here, still part of what we are, even as we who mourn continue in the heat of our own lives. And sorry, this is my punchline here. And you'll want the physicist to explain to those who loved you that they need not have faith. Indeed, they should not have faith. Let them know that they can measure, that scientists have measured precisely the conservation of energy and found it accurate, verifiable, and consistent across space and time. You can hope your family will examine the evidence and satisfy themselves that the science is sound, and that they'll be comforted to know your energy is still around. According to the law of the conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. You're just less orderly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethna. I started by ringing a singing bowl because, for me, sound is a beautiful way of bringing us to stillness or to listen. But the other beautiful thing about sound is it reminds me that the people that I love, when they're here, I'm listening to a song, they are singing, and when they pass, the song stops. But the sound still reverberates, it keeps going, it goes long, 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 it fades and fades and fades. Eventually I can't hear it, but it's still there, it's still out there. So to finish, speaking of song, Joe Armstrong has committed committed is the wrong word, but the piece that he read for us earlier has now been turned into a song, and it's going to be released, as far as I understand, fairly shortly. So we're going to be the first to hear this. I've forgotten the little girl's name. Would you like to come down and ring the bell just to finish? Would you like? No, you don't. Okay, cool. I can do that. That's grand. Lila. So thank you all for coming. Hopefully this is something that you appreciate, and I know you didn't come for no reason. You came because you wanted to be part of this. And I would encourage us all maybe to use the cafe afterwards or mingle and just chat and spend time. Thank you all. Thank you very much.